A young billionaire sees a little homeless girl save his twin daughters from drowning in the pool. The request she makes in return moves him to tears. The reflection of the setting sun tinted the windows of the imposing white mansion with gold. But Jack Morrison barely noticed the spectacle's beauty as his Porsche sped along the gravel driveway. His fingers tapped nervously on the Italian leather steering wheel, while his mind still processed the turbulent meeting he had just concluded. Another billion-dollar acquisition, another company added to his empire, more numbers, more zeros in his bank account, and yet that persistent emptiness lingered. The car's engine had barely stopped humming when Sandra, the housekeeper, appeared at the main door with an anxious expression Jack knew all too well. "Mr. Morrison, the girls asked about you all day. Ava had a ballet presentation today, and Emily—" "Sandra," Jack cut her off, massaging his temples. "Send the day's reports to my office. I need to finish some urgent emails." The housekeeper hesitated, twisting her hands in her immaculately white apron. "But sir, the girls—" "Later, Sandra, later." The click of his Italian shoes echoed through the empty hallways as he walked toward his office. Everything there exuded luxury and power: paintings by renowned artists, Persian rugs, exclusive designer furniture. It was an empire built through iron determination and absolute dedication to business, an empire that 3 years ago had lost its queen. Jack loosened his tie as he entered his office, his personal sanctuary. The mahogany walls protected the secrets of countless negotiations, mergers and acquisitions that had made him, at 35, one of the most powerful men in the country. He sat in his leather chair, turned on his laptop, and began typing furiously, diving into the only world where he truly felt in control. It was the sound of children's laughter that pulled him out of his workaholic trance, laughter that seemed to come from far away, even though his daughters were only a few rooms over. Jack glanced at the clock, 8:47 p.m. He frowned, realizing he had missed dinner. Again. He stood and walked to the window from where he could see the garden lit by strategically placed lights. Among the shadows of the ancient trees, he could make out Emily and Ava playing with Martha, the nanny. The twins were like small reflections of each other, with their golden hair and floral dresses that Claire, his late wife, would have adored. Claire. Her name still hurt like a wound that wouldn't heal. Jack closed his eyes, and for a moment he could see her clearly, her radiant smile, the way her eyes shone when she looked at the girls, her knack for making any place feel more alive just by being there. The accident that took her had been sudden and brutal, leaving a void even all his fortune couldn't fill. A sharp cry of delight cut through the air, followed by more laughter. Jack opened his eyes, watching his daughters. Ava had the same decisive manner as her mother, leading the games with a natural confidence. Emily was more contemplative, always observing everything with her large, curious eyes, so much like Claire's. "Daddy never plays with us." Emily's voice reached him clearly through the partially open window, making Jack freeze. "He's always busy," Ava replied, her small voice carrying a premature maturity that broke Jack's heart. "Martha said it's because he works so hard to give us a good life." "But I don't want a good life," Emily protested. "I want my daddy." The words hit Jack like a punch to the stomach. He staggered back a few steps until his legs found the leather armchair. He loosened his tie even more, feeling suffocated. On the opposite wall, a photo caught his attention. He and Claire at the hospital, each holding one of the newborn twins. Their smiles were bright, full of promises for a future that now felt painfully distant. Jack picked up his phone and scrolled through dozens of unread notifications, urgent emails, and messages from executives. Amid all that, there was a notification from the school app. Ballet presentation, Ava Morrison, 3 p.m. He had missed it, as always. The sound of footsteps in the hallway alerted him. Sandra appeared at the door, hesitant. "Mr. Morrison, the girls are asking to say goodnight." Jack looked at the laptop screen, at the contracts that needed reviewing, at the emails demanding immediate responses. His empire had not built itself and would not stand without his constant dedication. But Emily's words echoed in his head. "I don't want a good life, I want my daddy." For the first time in 3 years, Jack Morrison, the billionaire who could sway markets with a single phone call, felt completely lost. His empire was vast and powerful, but its foundations suddenly seemed fragile under the weight of a 5-year-old child's words. "Sandra," his voice came out hoarse, almost unrecognizable, "cancel my appointments for tomorrow morning." The housekeeper's eyes widened in surprise. In 5 years working there, it was the first time she had heard such a request. "All of them, sir." "All," Jack confirmed, standing up. "And Sandra, prepare breakfast in the garden tomorrow." For 3. As he walked toward the girl's bedroom, Jack felt the weight of 3 years of absence on his shoulders. His empire was intact, but his true treasure was slipping through his fingers, 1 minute at a time. The question was it too late to change? Morning sunlight bathed the gardens of the white mansion in a golden glow that made the property appear even more majestic. Jack Morrison watched his twin daughters playing during the breakfast he had promised, trying to ignore the dozens of notifications still popping up on his phone. Each of the girls' laughs was a painful reminder of all the moments he had missed over the last 3 years. Outside the mansion gates, Lily walked barefoot on the hot asphalt, her small feet already calloused by life on the streets. At 6 years old, her face still held traces of childish innocence, but her brown eyes carried a sorrowful wisdom no child should bear. Her stomach growled. She hadn't eaten anything in 2 days aside from scraps found in downtown restaurant trash bins. The little girl had already learned how to spot the best places to find food, the safest nooks to sleep, and especially which areas of the city to avoid. But that morning, something drew her to that luxurious neighborhood. Perhaps it was hunger's desperation, or maybe it was destiny weaving its mysterious paths. The sound of children's laughter reached her ears, making her stop. Through the mansion's ornate gates, Lily could see 2 girls running around the most beautiful garden she had ever seen. They wore clothes like those in the fancy shop windows at the mall, where she sometimes took shelter from the rain. Their golden hair sparkled in the sunlight, and their laughter was light, carefree, the kind of laughter Lily barely remembered. Inside the mansion, Jack finished an important phone call in his office. Through the window, he could see Martha, the nanny supervising the twins. Sandra, the housekeeper, had just gone inside to prepare lunch. It was a perfect Saturday morning, the kind of day Claire, his late wife, had always loved. "We just need your digital signature to finalize the acquisition, Mr. Morrison," the lawyer's voice sounded through the phone. "Another 500 million in assets for your portfolio." Jack muttered a brief affirmative response, his eyes fixed on the garden. Emily had just done a pirouette, something she'd probably learned in ballet class. Ava applauded enthusiastically, her blue eyes identical to her mother's, shining with admiration for her sister. Outside, Lily found a small flaw in the wall, partly hidden by neatly trimmed shrubs. Years on the streets had taught her to spot such opportunities. Normally, she would never risk sneaking onto such a lavish property. Mansions like this often employed guards who were not kind to homeless children. But something in those giggles drew her like a magnet. Moving with street-honed agility, Lily squeezed through the gap in the wall. Her heart pounded as she crept quietly among the garden's hedges. The grass beneath her bare feet felt as soft as velvet, so different from the city's rough asphalt. Martha was checking something on her phone, momentarily distracted from the twins. The girls had wandered closer to the pool, playing tag. Lily watched from behind a large potted plant, mesmerized by the scene of normalcy she had never known. Then it happened. Ava, running away from Emily, tripped near the pool's edge. Her small body lost balance, and in a reflex, Emily tried to grab her. The sudden motion caused both of them to topple. Martha's scream tore through the morning air as both girls fell into the water. In his office, Jack heard the scream. His body reacted before his mind fully processed it. The Italian leather chair hit the floor with a thud as he sprang up, the phone forgotten on the desk. Lily didn't think. Her small, skinny frame moved on pure instinct. Within seconds, she was running toward the pool. The fear that was always with her on the streets vanished, replaced by a fierce determination she never knew she had. The cold water hit her like a shock when she dove in. Her muscles protested the sudden chill, but Lily ignored it. She had learned to swim in the city's canals. Cold water was nothing new. Her eyes stung as she searched the clear pool water for the twins. Jack sprinted across the lawn, his heart pounding so hard it felt like it might burst. Martha stood frozen in horror at the pool's edge, her hands covering her mouth. Sandra ran from the house, phone in hand, already dialing an ambulance. Then he saw something that would change his life forever. A small figure emerged from the water, pulling Emily with surprising strength for someone so little. With swift, precise movements, she pushed the girl to the pool's edge, where Martha finally snapped out of her shock and grabbed her. Without hesitation, the tiny rescuer dove back under. The seconds that followed felt like an eternity to Jack. His billion-dollar empire or his business triumphs all seemed insignificant in the face of possibly losing his daughters. But then, like a miracle, the small figure broke the surface again, this time with Ava. Once they were all safely at the pool's edge, Jack finally got a clear look at the person who had saved his daughters. It was just a little girl, not much older than the twins. Her drenched, faded and torn dress clung to her frame, clearly too thin for her age. Her dark hair, tangled by the water, framed a face that was a mix of childlike innocence and a maturity forced upon her by street life. Emily and Ava were coughing, frightened but conscious, as Martha wrapped them in towels. Sandra was already on the phone reporting that the girls were okay, but an ambulance should come anyway, just to be safe. Their small heroine had stepped back a few paces, shivering violently. Her skinny arms hugged her body in a futile attempt to keep warm. Her bare feet left little puddles on the garden's marble patio. Jack approached her, still stunned by what had just occurred. He wanted to say something, thank her, ask her name, find out how she had gotten there, but words seemed inadequate in the face of what had just happened. That was when his eyes met hers. Large, expressive, a deep brown that seemed to hold far too many stories for someone so young. Fear shimmered there, yes, but there was something else too, a flicker of hope, or the last remnant of a childhood stolen too soon. The first raindrops began to fall, heralding an approaching storm. The wind picked up, making the little girl tremble even more in her soaked clothes. She took a hesitant step toward Jack, gathering a courage he would never understand. "My daughters," Jack began, his voice choked with emotion. "You saved them. How?" The question hung in the air, loaded with so many unspoken meanings. How could someone so small be so brave? How had she gotten there? How could someone who seemingly had nothing give so much? Lily swallowed hard, her heart pounding so fiercely she was sure everyone could hear it. Her tiny, calloused hands clenched together, fighting the trembling that consumed her. The rain was falling more heavily now, mingling with the silent tears streaming down her face. For a moment, all the lessons she had learned on the streets, distrust strangers, never ask for help, always be ready to run, seemed to vanish. In front of her stood a man who had everything she could never dream of having, a father who could give his daughters what she didn't even dare wish for. Emily and Ava now watched her curiously, still wrapped in their plush towels. Martha and Sandra stood nearby, torn between concern for the twins and fascination with this small, unknown savior. A distant rumble of thunder made Lily jump. It was now or never. In a small but steady voice, she made the request that would change not just her own life, but everyone else's as well. "Mister, could you give me a place to live?" The words hung in the air like the echo of thunder. Jack felt his heart clench at the stark simplicity of the plea. In his world of billion-dollar deals and extreme luxury, a child was asking for the basics, a roof over her head. The contrast was overwhelming. His daughters, safe in their soft towels, with bedrooms full of toys and all the comforts money could buy. And this tiny heroine, trembling in her torn clothes, asking for something as fundamental as a home. Jack felt something warm trickle down his face and realized he was crying. He, the ruthless businessman who never showed emotion in board meetings, was weeping before a homeless child who had just taught him more about courage and humanity than all his years in the corporate world. The rain fell harder now, but no one moved. Time seemed frozen in that garden, while the fate of many lives teetered on a single decision. Jack looked at his daughters, then at the small rescuer, and felt the weight of the choice he was about to make. It was a decision that would change everything: his carefully laid plans, his meticulously organized schedule, the life he had built over the last 3 years. Yet as he looked into those deep brown eyes, Jack Morrison, the billionaire who controlled markets with a phone call, realized that some decisions transcend spreadsheets and risk assessments. His answer, when it finally came, would mark the start of a journey none of them could predict. Lily's first night at the White Mansion was a study in contrasts. Her small body sank into the softest mattress she had ever felt, yet her eyes remained open, unsettled by the absolute silence in the bedroom. On the streets, silence meant danger. Here, it was just another luxury she'd have to get used to. Jack also didn't sleep that night. In his office, surrounded by forgotten financial reports, he frantically researched custody and adoption laws. The headlines on his tablet didn't help. Billionaire takes in homeless girl, charity or PR move. Experts question legalities of informal guardianship. Sandra, he called through the intercom when the first rays of sunlight began to color the sky. I need Dr. Williams's contact and cancel my morning commitments. The housekeeper, who had been waiting for instructions for hours, answered promptly, Dr. Williams is already on his way, sir. He returned your message at 3 a.m. At 9 a.m., Robert Williams, the family's attorney for 2 decades, walked into the office carrying a thick folder and a worried expression. Jack, we need to discuss the legal risks of this situation. Bob, that girl saved my daughters. That's admirable, but it doesn't change the fact that you can't just keep a minor under your roof without proper documentation. The legal implications... That's why I need you, Jack interrupted, his voice firm. I want to do this right. I want to give her a home, a family, a chance. The lawyer sighed, adjusting his glasses. I'll contact Sarah Chen. She's the best social worker I know, specialized in delicate cases. While the adults discussed her future, Lily explored her new world. Emily and Ava had appointed themselves her personal guides, showing her every corner of the mansion with the boundless enthusiasm of childhood. To the twins, it was like having a new sister. For Lily, it was like stepping into one of the fairy tales she occasionally read in libraries when hiding from the rain. This is the conservatory, Emily explained, opening a glass door. Mom loved to read here. Lily noticed how the girl's voice softened at the mention of her mother. On the streets, she had learned to read people. It was a survival skill. The pain of loss was something she understood all too well, even though her own family memories were too hazy to miss them deeply. You can read here too if you want, Ava quickly added. We have lots of books. Dad always says knowledge is the greatest treasure. Lily ran her fingers along the mahogany shelves, amazed by the sheer number of books. On the streets, every book she got was a precious treasure, usually abandoned or borrowed from a store that wasn't paying attention. Sarah Chen arrived precisely at 2 p.m. Years of experience in social work had taught her the importance of first impressions, especially with traumatized children. She observed Lily discreetly as Jack introduced them. Her posture was defensive, her eyes alert to all possible exits, her hands fidgeting with her new dress. Classic signs of a child from the streets. Lily, Sarah said gently, sitting on the library floor to be at the girl's eye level, can we talk for a bit? The little girl nodded, her eyes shifting between Sarah and the door. Jack started to leave, but Sarah motioned for him to stay. Please stay. Lily needs to understand she's not alone in this. For the next hour, Sarah gently led a conversation, mixing simple questions about likes and dislikes with more profound inquiries about Lily's past. The girl responded cautiously, her years of street survival evident in every measured word. Do you like it here? Sarah asked, noticing how Lily's eyes occasionally drifted toward the window. It's pretty, Lily answered after a pause. But different. Different how? Very quiet. And there are rules. On the street. She hesitated, casting a quick glance at Jack before continuing. On the street, I could go wherever I wanted. Sarah nodded understandingly. And do you miss that freedom? Lily hugged her knees, thoughtful. Sometimes, but here there's hot food, and Emily and Ava are nice. And... She looked at Jack again. Nobody ever wanted to give me a place before. The stark simplicity of that statement hit Jack like a punch to the stomach. Sarah noticed his reaction and decided it was time for a private discussion. Lily, would you mind if I talk to Mr. Morrison for a bit? It sounds like Emily and Ava are calling you in the garden." After the girl left, Sarah got straight to the point. "Mr. Morrison, I need to be clear, this is complex. Lily has been through traumas we can't fully imagine. The transition will be difficult on everyone. I'm prepared." "Are you really?" Sarah asked gently. "It's not just about offering a roof and food. Lily will need therapy, constant support, consistent but gentle boundaries. And your daughters will have to adapt to this new dynamic too." Jack stood up, walking to the window. In the garden, he could see the three girls playing. Lily was teaching the twins some sort of clapping game, probably something she'd learned on the streets. Their laughter filtered faintly through the glass. "You know, Ms. Chen, in the past 3 years since I lost my wife, I buried myself in work. I built an even bigger empire, thinking I was securing my daughter's future. But I was just hiding." He paused, watching how Lily smiled, a genuine smile, unlike the cautious one she gave adults. "When that little girl jumped into the pool to save my daughters, without a second thought, she wasn't calculating risks or benefits. It was pure humanity, something I'd forgotten in all the numbers and contracts." Sarah offered a soft smile. "I understand. But I need you to know there will be challenges. Lily may show difficult behaviors, regressions, rebellious moments. Trauma doesn't vanish overnight. I'm willing to face whatever it takes." "Okay," Sarah began gathering her papers. "I'll start the process for temporary custody. That'll be the first step. There will be regular visits, psychological evaluations, plenty of red tape." "What about adoption?" Jack asked, the word slipping out before he could hold it back. Sarah studied him for a moment. "It's a possibility, but let's not rush. Lily needs stability now. The rest will come in time." Once Sarah left, Jack remained in the library, watching the three girls in the garden. The afternoon sun cast long shadows on the lawn, and a gentle breeze carried the sound of their laughter. His phone buzzed constantly with business messages that, for the first time in a long while, could wait. Because out there in the garden, something far more important was happening. A family was beginning to heal, and a small street warrior was slowly finding her way home. The journey would be long and not always easy. But Jack Morrison, the man who'd built an empire on numbers and projections, was ready for his greatest and most vital investment yet, a home for a little heroine who had shown him the true value of what money can't buy. Sarah Chen had investigated hundreds of cases in her career as a social worker, but something in the file before her made her stomach churn. Sitting in her office at 2 in the morning, surrounded by empty coffee cups, she reread the documents on Holy Cross Orphanage for the 3rd time. Systemic negligence, uninvestigated complaints, missing children. The words seemed to jump off the page, forming an increasingly sinister picture. But it was a small photo stapled to the report that caught her eye. A much younger Lily, with frightened eyes and a poorly placed bandage on her face. The report was from 2 years ago when Lily was only 4. "Patient presents bruises inconsistent with accidental falls," the medical document read. When questioned, she shows evasive behavior typical of traumatized children. Sarah picked up her phone, hesitating only a moment before dialing. It was late, but she knew Jack Morrison would be awake. "I found something," she said as soon as he answered. "I need to show you in person. First thing tomorrow." At the White Mansion, Jack hung up the phone with a sense of dread. He could hear muffled laughter from the girls' bedroom. In the past few days, he'd often found all three of them awake late, sharing stories and secrets. He approached the slightly open door quietly. Lily was sitting on Emily's bed, gesturing animatedly as she told a story. The twins watched her in fascination. "And then I climbed on top of the bakery's roof," Lily recounted, her eyes shining at the memory. "From up there, I could see the whole city. The lights looked like stars." "Weren't you scared?" Ava asked, hugging her teddy bear. Lily hesitated for a moment, a shadow crossing her eyes. "On the street, you learn to be more afraid of people than places." The simple statement hit Jack like a blow. He backed away quietly, leaving the girls with their late-night confessions. In his office, he spent hours looking at old family photos. Emily and Ava always smiling, always protected, always loved. What kind of world allowed some children to have everything, while others learned to fear people before they could even read. The next morning, Sarah arrived at the mansion carrying a thick folder and a grave expression. Jack received her in his office, noticing the tiredness in her eyes, the dark circles beneath her glasses. "Before we start," Sarah said, arranging her documents, "you need to understand something. What I'm about to show you is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much we may never know, traumas Lily may never be able to express in words." Jack nodded, bracing himself for the worst, but nothing could have prepared him for the next 2 hours. Sarah laid out a story of institutionalized negligence, covered-up abuses, and a broken system that allowed children like Lily to fall through society's cracks. Holy Cross Orphanage, where Lily had spent her early years, was a case study in how institutions meant to protect children could become places of nightmares. "Here's a medical report from when she was 40. Sarah showed him a document stained with coffee. The doctor suspected abuse, but the investigation was conveniently shelved. Jack studied the photo stapled to the report, his heart clenching at the sight of a much younger Lily with a bruised face. How was this allowed to happen? "Money," Sarah answered simply. Or rather, the lack of it. Places like Holy Cross survive on minimal funding, poorly paid staff, and inadequate oversight. It's a vicious cycle of neglect. But there were complaints that were ignored or silenced. The system is broken, Jack. And children like Lily pay the price. While the adults pored over her past, Lily was in the garden with the twins, teaching them how to make daisy chain crowns from flowers picked in the flower beds. It was a skill she'd learned from an old woman who fed pigeons in the park, one of the few people who'd shown her kindness on the streets. "Like this," she demonstrated carefully. "You have to weave it gently or it'll snap." Emily and Ava watched intently, their small hands trying to imitate Lily's precise movements. It was remarkable how the twins, used to expensive and high-tech toys, were fascinated by something so simple. In the office, Sarah continued her account. "Lily ran away from the orphanage about a year ago. There's no official record of her escape. Probably to avoid an investigation, she simply vanished. And no one looked for her." Jack's voice quivered with barely contained anger. "Officially? Yes, a missing child report was filed. In practice, she was just another statistic." Sarah adjusted her glasses, bitterness lacing her tone. "Do you know how many children go missing from the system every year, Jack? How many end up on the streets because it's less frightening than the places that should protect them?" Jack stood, walking to the window. In the garden, he saw the 3 girls laughing as they placed the flower crowns on each other's heads. The scene was so pure, so innocent, and it clashed painfully with the revelations he'd just heard. "What haunts me most," Sarah continued, her voice gentler now, "is that Lily is one of the lucky ones. She survived. She found you. But how many others? Is there anything we can do?" Jack interrupted, turning to face her. "File a lawsuit against the orphanage. Expose those responsible." "We can, and we should, but it'll be a long, ugly battle, and we must prioritize Lily. She's just starting to feel safe here, just starting to trust. A public scandal could reopen wounds that have barely begun to heal." Jack looked back at the garden. Lily was now showing the twins some sort of hand-clapping game, something else she must have learned out there. He was amazed by how she turned every small survival skill into a game or lesson to share. "Have you noticed," Sarah asked, following his gaze, "how your daughters have changed since she arrived?" Jack nodded. It was impossible not to notice. Emily, always so shy, now spoke with more confidence. Ava, who tended to be a bit spoiled, demonstrated a new awareness of others' needs. It was as though Lily, with her unique mix of strength and vulnerability, was teaching the twins lessons no elite school ever could. "Yesterday," Jack shared, "I found Ava setting aside some of her newer dolls. When I asked what she was doing, she said she wanted to donate them to children who, like Lily, have no toys. Emily is organizing a book drive at school." Sarah smiled. "Lily is teaching them something precious. Empathy. Not the superficial kind that comes from occasional charity, but real understanding that not all children have the same opportunities." A shout of glee from the garden caught their attention. Lily was showing the twins how to do somersaults on the grass. Jack's heart tightened as he saw her carefully place cushions around so the girls wouldn't get hurt, a protective instinct born of her own painful experiences. "Jack," Sarah said softly, "there's one more thing we need to talk about. During my research, I found something intriguing." She took one last document from her folder. "I gained access to Lily's admission records at Holy Cross. She was left there as an infant, just a few months old. There was no documentation of her parents, just a small handwritten note with her name and birth date. But," she paused meaningfully, "there was also this." Sarah slid a faded photograph across the table. It showed a newborn baby wearing a small gold chain around her neck. Jack picked up the photo carefully, noticing something engraved on the pendant. "It's a medallion," Sarah explained, "with a very specific symbol. I spent the night researching, and this symbol belongs to an old Portuguese family. If we manage to track it—" She was interrupted by another burst of laughter from the garden. Lily was now demonstrating how to make animal shadows under the late afternoon sun. "No," Jack said firmly, handing the photo back. "Not now. Lily is finally starting to feel secure, to build connections. I won't risk that for a search that may lead nowhere." Sarah nodded, understanding. "I agree, but I'll keep the information on file. Maybe one day, when she's older and stronger emotionally, then we'll deal with it. For now." Jack glanced at the garden again, where the three girls lay on the grass watching the clouds. "For now, let her just be a child. She already carries too much weight for someone so young." When Sarah left and it was almost nighttime, Jack lingered in his office for a long while, processing everything he had learned. His phone vibrated endlessly with ignored work notifications, but for the first time in his business life, the numbers seemed meaningless. A soft knock on the door pulled him back to the present. It was Lily, still wearing the flower crown she had made earlier. "Mr. Morrison," she asked timidly, "Emily and Ava were wondering if you could read us a bedtime story. They said you used to do that before." Jack felt something warm and wet in his eyes. "Of course, sweetheart. And Lily, you can call me Jack." The smile she gave in return lit up her whole face. It was different from the careful smile she often gave adults. This one was pure, genuine, childlike. Jack silently vowed to do everything in his power to protect that newly discovered light, because at that moment, he understood that his true mission was no longer to build an even bigger financial empire, but to help rebuild a heart broken by life far too soon. That night, for the first time in 3 years, Jack Morrison read bedtime stories to his daughters until they fell asleep. And if he noticed that Lily, lying between the twins, was still clutching a small piece of her old street dress while she slept, he understood. Sometimes, even when we find a new home, we need to keep a small fragment of our past, not to be trapped by it, but to remind us how far we've come. Dawn was coloring the sky pink when Lily woke up, a habit formed on the streets that the mansion had not yet managed to break. For a moment, she lay there, marveling at the feeling of having her own space. From the hallway came the familiar sound of Sandra preparing breakfast. She slipped out of bed quietly, her bare feet sinking into the soft rug. In 2 weeks at the mansion, she had already memorized the house's routine. Sandra was always up first, followed by Martha. Jack was usually in his office before sunrise, and the twins loved sleeping in. But something felt different that morning. Passing the corridor, Lily noticed Jack's office door was ajar. He wasn't busy with paperwork or on the phone as usual. He was simply sitting in his chair, looking at an old photograph. "You can come in, Lily," he said softly, not turning around. During these 2 weeks, she had learned that Jack had a sixth sense about the children's presence. Lily approached hesitantly. In the photo Jack held, a blonde-haired woman beamed with joy, holding 2 newborn baby girls. "It's their mother," Lily said, not really asking. Jack nodded. "Claire, today marks exactly 3 years and 4 months since she left us." Lily took in the information quietly. On the streets, she'd learned that sometimes the best comfort was simply being there. She climbed onto the armchair beside Jack, her feet dangling above the floor. "You know," Jack began, his voice soft, "ever since Claire passed, I kind of lost my way. I threw myself into my work, built an even bigger empire, thinking it was what my daughters needed. But I was wrong. They needed you, Lily said simply. Jack looked at her in surprise. It was easy to forget that behind those childlike eyes was a wisdom forged by experiences no child should have. How do you know so much about what people need, sweetheart? Lily shrugged, a gesture that combined innocence and maturity in a unique way. On the street, you learn to watch. Rich people always think other rich people need fancy things, but everyone really just wants to be together. The sun was higher by the time Emily and Ava woke up, discovering a rare sight in the kitchen. Jack, still in his immaculate suit, attempting to make pancakes under Lily's watchful guidance. "You can't stir too much," she instructed, "or they'll turn rubbery." The twins looked on in fascination as their father, the powerful Jack Morrison, took cooking lessons from a 6-year-old. Sandra, discreetly on the other side of the kitchen, pretended not to notice that half the flour ended up on the floor. "Daddy never cooks," Emily whispered to Ava, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Well," Jack responded, flipping a pancake with surprising skill, "it's never too late to learn something new." Breakfast turned into an impromptu celebration. The pancakes weren't perfect, some were slightly burnt, others a bit underdone, but no one seemed to mind. It was the first meal Jack had ever prepared for his daughters. Well, ever. "Tell us a street story, Lily," Ava requested, drizzling chocolate syrup on her pancake. Jack noticed Lily hesitate. Stories from the streets were a delicate subject. Some were fun, others definitely not. But the little girl had developed a knack for turning even her harshest experiences into teachable moments. "Once," she began, "I found an injured bird near the market. It was raining, and it couldn't fly." The twins listened, spellbound, as Lily described how she sheltered the bird in a shoebox, feeding it crumbs until it healed. What she didn't mention, but Jack grasped between the lines, was that those crumbs were likely all she had to eat that day. "Did it fly again?" Emily asked, her eyes sparkling. "Yes," Lily smiled. "Sometimes people, or birds, just need a chance to heal." Jack felt a warmth in his chest at the not-so-subtle metaphor. In just 2 weeks, Lily had brought more life and lessons to his home than all the tutors and elite schools he had hired for the twins. The day unfolded differently than usual. Jack cancelled his meetings to his assistant's shock and spent the day learning what Lily called real play. In the garden, she showed the twins how to make paper boats to float in the fountain, a skill learned from an old newspaper vendor who gave her shelter on rainy days. "You have to fold them carefully," she explained, "or they'll sink." Jack watched, amazed at how Lily turned every little survival skill into a life lesson. When Emily got frustrated that her boat sank, Lily comforted her. "It always sinks the first time. What matters is trying again." In the afternoon, to everyone's surprise, Jack joined the girls in a treasure hunt Lily had organized around the garden. She used small painted stones as clues, a game she invented during her lonely street days, imagining adventures to keep fear and hunger at bay. "How did you come up with all these clues?" Jack asked, impressed by the game's complexity. Lily gave a shy smile. "When you don't have toys, you have to use your imagination." That simple phrase hit Jack like lightning. How many times had he tried to compensate for his absence with expensive presents? How many high-tech toys filled the twins' rooms, when what they really wanted was his time and attention? Sunset found the four of them sitting on the lawn, exhausted but happy. Jack had loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves, his fancy suit rumpled in a way that would horrify his tailor. The twins' hair was disheveled, their clothes stained with grass, but their smiles were brighter than any party dress. "Can we do this again tomorrow?" Ava asked hopefully. Jack hesitated, his reflex to think of commitments, meetings, and deadlines. But then he saw the sparkle in his daughter's eyes and the way Lily seemed more at ease than ever, and he made a decision. "How about we make every Sunday our play day?" The twins' squeal of joy was deafening. Lily stayed quiet, but Jack noticed tears shining in her eyes. Later, after Sandra tucked the girls into bed, Jack found Lily in the library. She was curled up in an armchair much too big for her, flipping through a fairy tale book. "Do you know how to read?" he asked gently. "A little," she answered. "I learned by watching people in the public library. Sometimes when it was really cold, I'd stay there all day." Jack sat beside her, carefully picking up the book. "Do you want me to read to you?" The smile she gave in return lit up her entire face. It was different from her guarded smiles. This one was pure, genuine, childlike. Jack began to read, his deep voice bringing the characters to life. He didn't notice when Emily and Ava, supposed to be asleep, crept in and nestled silently on the carpet. The story was about a little orphan girl who found a magical family. At some point, Jack paused, realizing all three girls had dozed off. Lily was curled up in his lap, one small hand clinging to the sleeve of his jacket. Taking care not to wake them, Jack gazed at the scene. His daughters, who had always had everything, were learning about gratitude and simplicity, and Lily, who had never had anything, was teaching them lessons no fortune could buy. In that moment, Jack understood something profound. Family isn't just about blood ties or legal documents. It's about moments like these: imperfect pancakes at breakfast, a treasure hunt in the garden, bedtime stories shared until everyone falls asleep. It's about realizing that sometimes the most valuable gifts are those that can't be bought. As he carried each girl to her bed, Jack made a silent promise. His empire could wait. Meetings could be rescheduled. The corporate world would keep spinning without his constant presence. But these moments, precious moments with his daughters, all three of them, were irreplaceable. And if someone had told him a few weeks ago that a little homeless girl would teach him more about love and family than all his years of business success, he would have laughed. But now, watching Lily sleep peacefully in her new bed, Jack Morrison knew that some miracles arrive in unexpected packages. And sometimes, those miracles save us exactly when we didn't know we needed saving. The first photographer showed up on a random Tuesday. Jack noticed him hiding behind the shrubs while the girls played in the garden. The next day, there were three. By Friday, a TV station van had discreetly parked across the street. "Mr. Morrison," Sandra entered his office with a stack of newspapers. "It's begun." The headline screamed in sensationalist fonts: "Billionaire takes in homeless girl. Act of charity or strategy? Who is the mysterious child at the Morrison mansion? Experts question legality of informal placement." Jack scanned the articles, his jaw clenched. Most speculated about his motivations, suggesting everything from money laundering to a PR move to improve his public image. Some even insinuated far-fetched connections between Lily and his late wife. "Daddy?" Emily's voice pulled him from the reading. She stood in the doorway, holding Lily's hand. "Why are people taking pictures of us?" Before he could answer, the phone rang. It was Sarah. "Jack, I'm on my way. The situation is getting complicated. I just received 3 inquiries from different agencies questioning Lily's legal status." The day turned into a whirlwind of emergency meetings. Lawyers came in and out of the office while Sarah coordinated with various officials. Outside, the number of reporters only grew. Lily watched it all silently from her corner in the library, her eyes, as always, missing nothing. Jack found her there late in the afternoon, curled up with a book she pretended to read. "Are they going to send me away?" she asked bluntly, her small voice steady. "No," Jack answered with a conviction he didn't know he possessed. "I won't let that happen." But the pressure mounted. Tabloids dug into her street life, turning every minor incident into a sensational headline. "Wild Child, the dark past of the Morrisons' new protégé," blared one particularly cruel newspaper. "We need a strategy," Robert Williams, his attorney, insisted. "What about an exclusive interview? We control the narrative, present Lily as the heroine who saved your daughters." "No," Jack said firmly. "I won't turn a child into a media spectacle." The twins began to feel the effects. At school, other parents whispered and pointed. Some classmates asked uncomfortable questions about their new homeless sister. Emily came home crying after a girl said Lily was only after their money. That was when Jack realized he needed to act, not for the newspapers or the public's opinion, but for his daughters, all 3 of them. On a particularly chaotic morning, with reporters practically camped at the mansion's gates, he gathered the girls in his office. Lily stayed near the door, as though ready to run at any moment. "Do you know what a family is?" he asked, sitting on the floor with them. Emily and Ava exchanged confused looks. Lily replied, her voice soft but clear. "It's when people genuinely care about each other." "Exactly," Jack smiled. "It's not about blood or paperwork. It's about love and caring. And the four of us, we're a family now." "But the newspapers say," Ava began. "They don't know us," Jack cut in gently. "They don't know how Lily taught you to make paper boats, or how Emily helps her with homework, or how Ava always saves a piece of her favorite chocolate to share with her." The girls smiled, recalling those little moments. Lily relaxed a bit, her tense shoulders lowering. "People outside are going to talk a lot," Jack continued. "They'll make up stories, ask questions, try to divide us. But do you know what we do with that?" "What?" the three asked in unison. Jack grabbed one of the newspapers and began folding it. In a few minutes, he had turned the malicious headline into a small paper airplane. "We turn the bad into something good," he explained, launching the plane out the window. "Like Lily does every day, finding little games in hard moments." The girls giggled, grabbing more newspapers to make their own airplanes. Soon, the office was filled with paper planes, each carrying a negative headline turned into a bit of fun. That night, after the children were in bed, Jack called an emergency meeting. Sarah, Robert, and the PR team gathered in his office. "We won't play their game," he announced. "No interviews, no staged photos, no fabricated stories. We're doing this properly, legally and ethically." "But the public pressure," someone began. "The only pressure I care about is my daughter's happiness," Jack cut in. "All of them. Lily isn't a story to sell newspapers. She's part of this family." Sarah smiled, proud. This was the kind of resolve she'd hoped to see from the start. In the days that followed, the mansion turned into a fortress of protection. Extra security was hired, not just to keep reporters away, but to ensure the children could play in the garden without being photographed. The school was notified that any harassment of the girls would be met with legal action. But the real change happened inside the house. Every negative headline became an opportunity to strengthen their bonds. When one newspaper questioned Lily's ability to adapt to civilized life, the twins hosted a formal tea party, showing her how to use all the different utensils just because it's fun, not because it matters. When another publication suggested she was manipulating the family, Jack found all three girls asleep on the library floor, surrounded by books and drawings. Lily in the middle, guarded by Emily and Ava like little protectors. The media onslaught continued, but something had shifted. Each attempt to tear apart this emerging family only made it stronger, because, as Lily had said, a family is when people truly care about each other, and no headline could change that. Because of that, no matter how loud the reporters shouted, the Morrison family stayed united. Each challenge became one more chapter in a story about love that outshone public curiosity. For some battles, the best defense is simply to hold tight to the people you love. Jack Morrison stared at his reflection in the bathroom mirror at 3 in the morning, cold water dripping from his face. The nightmare still echoed in his mind. Lily, back on the streets, while he watched helplessly from a glass mansion. Just a dream, he whispered to himself. But the doubts lingered. Deep down, a nagging voice questioned whether he truly knew how to raise a child who came from a world so different from his own. From the hallway, he heard light footsteps. Lily was awake too. In the last few days, since the media siege had begun, she had slipped back into old street habits, sleeping little, staying on high alert, keeping a small backpack with essentials hidden under her bed. "Can't sleep?" he asked, finding her in the kitchen. Lily shook her head, small hands wrapped around a glass of water. "The photographers are still out there." A wave of guilt washed over Jack. His world of privilege was now endangering the safety he was trying to give her. "Lily, no one is going to send you away." "That's what the lady at the orphanage said too," she answered simply, and Jack's heart clenched. In his office, piles of financial reports awaited. Numbers that once mattered so much now seemed empty. What did a few more billions matter if a child couldn't sleep for fear of losing her home? "You know," Lily went on, her voice small but wise beyond her years, "on the street, you learn that nothing is forever. Everything can change in the blink of an eye." Jack knelt to be at her level. "But some things don't change at Sweetheart, like the love we've built here. Lily's eyes met his, filled with a mixture of hope and fear. But what if I don't know how to be part of this family? What if I do something wrong? The question hit Jack like a punch, because it was the very thing he feared himself. What if he didn't know how to be the father Lily needed? Upstairs, Emily started crying. Another nightmare. Before Jack could move, Lily was already on her way. He followed silently, watching as she comforted Emily with a wisdom no child should have. "When I was scared on the street," Lily whispered to Emily, "I made up happy stories in my head. Want me to tell you one?" Jack stayed invisible at the door as Lily turned her own street experiences into a fairy tale. Emily soon fell back asleep, a small smile tugging at her lips. It was then that Jack understood. Their fears and doubts didn't matter. What mattered was this moment, this imperfect but real family they were building. Because while he worried about being a good father to Lily, she was already being an extraordinary sister to his daughters. "Come on," he said softly as Lily emerged from Emily's room. "I think we all need some hot chocolate." In the quiet kitchen, making cocoa the way Lily had shown him weeks earlier, Jack finally found peace with his doubts. Maybe the secret wasn't about being perfect, but about showing up, learning and growing together. "Lily," he asked as she blew on her hot chocolate, "are you afraid of the future?" "Every day," she replied honestly. "But now, I'm afraid with hot chocolate. It's better than being afraid with cold and hunger." Jack chuckled, though his eyes were wet. This little warrior had taught him more about courage and resilience than all his years in the corporate world. When the sun rose, it found father and daughter sound asleep on the living room couch, empty cocoa cups on the coffee table. And if the photographers outside had managed to snap that photo, they would have captured something their sensational headlines could never convey. The precise moment when fears and prejudices transformed into unconditional love. The man at the gate of the Morrison mansion didn't look threatening at first glance. Tall, well-dressed, sporting a smile that might have been called fatherly, if not for the calculating gleam in his eyes. Thomas Reynolds, director of Holy Cross Orphanage, waited with a folder of documents and a court order in hand. "Mr. Morrison," he greeted when Jack came out to meet him. "I'm here for Lily. She is legally a ward of the state under our institution's responsibility." Jack felt a chill spread through his body. Through the library window, he could see the three girls reading together, unaware of the storm brewing. "My lawyers," he began. "Your lawyers," Reynolds interjected calmly, "will find everything in order. Lily ran away from a licensed institution. By law, she must return." The emergency meeting that followed turned Jack's office into a legal battleground. Sarah Chen was there with Robert Williams and a team of attorneys. Reynolds presented his arguments with the composure of someone who had done it many times before. "Holy Cross Orphanage has an impeccable reputation," he proclaimed. "Any allegations of mistreatment are purely speculative." "Impeccable." Sarah couldn't hide her anger. "I have here reports from 3 surprise inspections, all properly addressed and archived." Reynolds smiled. "Miss Chen, I know your heart's in the right place, but there are procedures to be followed." Jack observed the exchange in silence, his mind racing. Something about Reynolds deeply unsettled him. It was like looking into a distorted mirror, another man wielding power and influence to control lives, but for entirely different reasons. Their argument was interrupted by a scream from the garden. Jack sprinted to the window, heart pounding, only to see Lily teaching the twins how to do cartwheels. Their laughter echoed all the way into the office, a painful reminder of what was at stake. "Mr. Reynolds," Jack finally spoke, his voice controlled. "How much?" The orphanage director raised an eyebrow. "Pardon. Don't insult my intelligence. What's your price?" Reynolds smiled in a grin that didn't reach his eyes. "Mr. Morrison, I'm a dedicated public servant. I'm not here to negotiate, but to uphold the law." That night, after Reynolds left with a thinly veiled threat to come back with the police, Jack found himself rummaging through old boxes in the attic. He was searching for something, anything, that might help in the legal fight ahead. That was when he found Claire's journal. The blue hardcover notebook was hidden among old documents. Jack recognized his wife's delicate handwriting immediately. He started reading random entries until one in particular caught his attention. March 20th. I finally worked up the courage. I started the process today. Jack is so busy with the company merger that he hasn't noticed my visits to the adoption center. I know I should tell him, but I want to be sure first. Emily and Ava need more love in their lives, and there are so many children who need a home. Jack felt the air leave his lungs. With trembling hands, he kept reading. Claire had visited several orphanages, including Holy Cross. Her notes were meticulous, detailing her impressions of the children and the institution's conditions. April 12th. Something's wrong at Holy Cross. The kids seem scared. The director is too polite. His answers rehearsed. I need to investigate further. The last entry was dated just 3 days before the accident that took her life. April 15th. I found proof. What happens at Holy Cross is criminal. Tomorrow I'm meeting with an investigative journalist. Reynolds can't keep getting away with this. Jack dropped the journal, his mind spinning. Claire hadn't just planned to adopt. She was about to expose something about the orphanage, something that might have cost her life. The next day, the legal fight began in earnest. Reynolds returned with a team of state social workers and a more specific court order. Jack's side countered with an emergency injunction. Lily watched everything with frightened eyes, clinging to Emily's hand. The twins refused to leave their sister's side, forming a small protective barrier around her. I won't go back, Lily stated when Reynolds tried to step closer, her voice soft but unwavering. You hurt kids there. Nobody's hurting anyone, dear, Reynolds replied sweetly. You're just confused. You let your imagination... Don't touch her, Jack cut him off, his tone lethal. Something in Lily's words, combined with Claire's final journal entries, ignited a cold fury in his chest. The fight dragged on for days that turned into weeks. Reynolds seemed to have connections everywhere, judges who conveniently accepted his arguments, social workers who dismissed contradictory evidence. Jack threw himself into his own investigation, motivated by Claire's revelations. He hired private detectives, scoured records, followed clues she had left behind. A disturbing pattern emerged: children disappearing from Holy Cross, falsified records, complaints systematically suppressed, all pointing to a director who always emerged unscathed, protected by a carefully cultivated network of favors. But it was on a particularly tough night that Jack had a real epiphany. He found Lily in the conservatory, curled up with a book she pretended to read. Want me to read it to you? He offered, sitting beside her. Lily shook her head. I don't want to like it here too much, she whispered. It hurts more when you lose the things you love. The heartbreaking honesty of her words hit Jack like lightning. How many times had he done the same in his own privileged childhood, keeping emotional distance, burying himself in numbers and achievements to avoid the pain of absent parents? You know, he started, when I was little, my parents were also very rich. We had everything money could buy, but there wasn't love, Lily finished, her wise eyes meeting his. No, Jack admitted aloud for the first time. And when I grew up, I promised things would be different with my daughters. But after Claire passed, I guess I fell back into the same pattern, working harder, buying more, as if that could fill the void. Is that why you're afraid to fight for me? The question caught him off guard. What? You're scared to fight and lose, like you lost your wife. Jack felt tears he hadn't known he was holding back. This little girl, who had faced more pain than any child should, was reading his soul like an open book. No, he finally answered. I'm afraid of not fighting hard enough, of letting the system win the way I let work pull me away from Emily and Ava for too long. That night, after tucking the girls into bed, Jack returned to his office with renewed resolve. On his computer, Claire's journal entries were digitized and analyzed. Each clue, each note, every suspicion now painted a terrible picture. Mr. Reynolds, he said over the phone, his voice colder than ice, I think we need to talk. I have some very interesting documents my late wife left behind. Documents she intended to give a journalist the day after her accident. The silence on the other end was deafening. You're not suggesting... I'm not suggesting anything, Jack cut him off. "I'm just giving you a choice. We can do this the easy way, with you dropping all claims and demands about Lily, or I can finish what Claire started. You have no proof. You want to bet? I have unlimited resources, Mr. Reynolds, and now I have something even more valuable, a personal reason." The conflict didn't end that night, but the tide began to turn. Mysterious documents started leaking to the press. Former victims of Holy Cross found the courage to speak up. Reynolds's protective network began to crumble. Weeks later, when the final legal appeal was denied and Lily's temporary custody was officially granted to Jack, he discovered the 3 girls asleep in the library. Lily was at the center, protected by Emily and Ava, an open fairy tale book on her lap. Jack stood there, thinking of Claire. Had she seen this coming? Had she somehow paved the way for this unexpected family? He gently took the book without waking them, noticing it was open to a story about a princess who rescued other children from a dark castle. Smiling, he sat in a nearby armchair, standing guard over his most precious treasures, because now he understood. Some battles aren't won with money or power, but with love and courage. And sometimes, children teach us the most important lessons about both. The night was still clinging to the mansion when Lily woke, her small heart pounding against her chest. The nightmare still rang in her mind. She was back on the streets, alone, watching the mansion from a distance as Emily and Ava waved a sad goodbye from the window. With trembling hands, she touched the piece of her old dress she kept under her pillow, an anchor reminding her this wasn't just a dream. In the corridor, she heard familiar footsteps. Jack was awake as well. In the days since the court date was announced, he had barely slept, pacing his office at night, rehearsing arguments, reviewing documents, wrestling with his own fears. "Can't sleep either, sweetheart." His gentle voice came from the slightly open door. The dawn hadn't yet broken when Lily awoke, her heart beating fast. The nightmare still loomed large, being back on the streets, looking at the white mansion from afar while Emily and Ava waved goodbye. Her trembling hands sought the scrap of her old street dress under her pillow, grounding her in the reality that she wasn't dreaming. Outside her room, she heard the same measured steps, Jack's pacing the hall. Ever since the trial date had been set, he too had been fighting sleepless nights, conferring with lawyers, rechecking evidence, battling his own uncertainties. "You're up too, little one." His soft voice drifted through the partially open door. Neither of them went back to sleep that night. Jack told her stories about Claire, how she used to sing to the twins, how her smile lit up any room, how she had always known their family had more than enough love to share. "That's why she started the adoption process," he explained in the pre-dawn darkness of the bedroom. "She saw beyond circumstances. She looked straight into people's hearts." "Like she would have looked at me?" Lily asked timidly. "Yes, sweetheart, exactly like she would have looked at you." The sun was just rising when Emily and Ava appeared at the doorway, still in matching pajamas. Wordlessly, they climbed onto the bed, one on each side of Lily. That's how it had been from the start, an unspoken instinct guiding them to protect their new sister. Sandra found them like that an hour later when she came to announce breakfast. The sight of Jack dozing in the armchair, the 3 girls huddled under the covers, warmed her heart with a vision of a family that had finally learned to stay together, no matter what. The aroma of fresh coffee and pancakes filled the Morrison mansion's kitchen when Sarah Chen arrived. The social worker smiled, watching Lily help Sandra stir the batter, a ritual they'd developed over the past few months. "You have to stir gently," Lily was explaining to Jack, who attempted his own pancake, "like you're rocking a baby." Sarah observed the scene with practiced eyes. 15 years in social work had taught her to read family dynamics in the smallest details. The way Emily and Ava naturally made room for Lily in all their activities, the way Jack listened intently to every word from this tiny teacher, and the way Lily herself allowed moments of genuine relaxation in their presence. No report could capture such nuances. "Is everyone ready?" she asked after breakfast. She carried a folder filled with carefully organized documents, a puzzle they had to complete in court. Psychological assessments, school evaluations, testimonial letters, each piece a testament to the extraordinary transformation unfolding. The family court building was imposing, its marble steps looking even more daunting that morning. Lily gripped the twins' hands as they climbed, each step echoing like thunder in her ears. In the lobby, Robert Williams and his team waited. "Everything is set," he assured Jack. "We've prepared every precedent, every legal argument. But honestly, the real strength of our case is that little warrior." The hearing room was already packed. On one side, Jack's team, lawyers, experts, carefully selected witnesses. On the other, state representatives, their faces ranging from professional skepticism to barely concealed curiosity. Judge Elena Martinez was known for her wisdom and impartiality. In 20 years on the bench, she had overseen hundreds of custody cases. But something about the Morrison petition had caught her particular interest. "Before we begin," she announced, adjusting her thin-rimmed glasses, "I want to clarify that this is not a typical case. We're not just determining legal custody, but potentially setting a precedent for what truly defines a family." Jack was the first to testify. Dressed in an impeccable suit, bearing the confident air of a CEO, he looked every bit the man who commanded a billion-dollar empire. Yet there was something new in his eyes, a softness, a humanity absent months ago. "Mr. Morrison," the judge began, "are you aware that adoption is permanent? This isn't like a business contract that can be renegotiated." "Your Honor," Jack answered, his voice steady despite the emotion behind it. "I've learned these past months that the most important commitments in life have no escape clauses. When Lily jumped into that pool to save my daughters, she wasn't calculating risks or benefits. She simply acted out of unconditional love." He paused, his gaze drifting to Lily in the audience. "Since then, that little warrior has taught me daily the meaning of that love. She taught me that being a father isn't about how much money you can give a child, but how many times you're willing to keep trying, even when you mess up." Next, Sarah presented the evidence gathered over recent months. Psychological evaluations highlighted Lily's remarkable emotional progress. School assessments documented how she had made up years of educational gaps in just months. But it was the home videos that visibly shifted the courtroom's atmosphere. Everyday scenes flashed on screen. Lily patiently teaching Jack how to braid her hair, guiding his clumsy fingers. The three girls fast asleep in one bed during a storm, shielding each other under blankets. Jack cancelling an important meeting to attend Lily's first school performance. "Observe," Sarah narrated as the images rolled, "how Lily's survival instincts, waking up early, checking exits, always staying alert, have turned into protective instincts for her new sisters. This isn't just trauma, it's transformation." The turning point came when Lily took the stand. She looked even smaller in the witness chair, her feet dangling above the floor, but her eyes held a strength that surprised even Judge Martinez. "Lily," the judge said kindly, "can you tell us about your life before meeting the Morrison family?" "On the street," Lily began, her voice clear despite her nerves, "you learn lots of things. You learn that not every smiling person is good, and not every grumpy person is bad. You learn that sometimes the best dinner is a piece of stale bread if someone you care about shares it with you." The courtroom was silent, mesmerized by an ancient wisdom in such a young voice. "At the orphanage," she went on, "they said nobody would want a kid like me. That I was complicated." Her gaze flicked to the twins. "But Emily and Ava never saw me as complicated. Just different, like everyone is different." "And Mr. Morrison," the judge asked, "what is your relationship with him like?" A small smile lit Lily's face. He tries to make pancakes every Sunday, even when they come out funny. He tries to learn how to braid my hair, even when each braid looks different. And when you've spent so long with nobody trying," she swallowed hard, "trying becomes a huge way of showing love." The judge's deliberations seemed to stretch forever. When she finally returned, her face was composed. "It is the decision of this court that full custody of Lily be granted to Jack Morrison, with a recommendation for the immediate start of formal adoption proceedings." The hug that followed united four people as if they were one. "Family," Lily whispered, for the first time. "My family." In the car, on the way home, Lily took the tattered piece of her old dress out of her pocket. "You know," she said, I kept this so I'd never forget what it's like to have nothing. But now, she smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. Now I want to keep it to remember what it's like to gain everything. And you know what else? She continued, her tone lighter. I think we need to do something for all the other kids out there like me. Jack smiled at her through the rearview mirror. I was thinking of starting a foundation to help homeless children. Claire Foundation, Emily suggested softly. Mom would like that. Back home, Lily placed the piece of her dress in a special box in the library, the same place where she'd once hidden, listening to bedtime stories. Now she had a story of her own. Years later, the Claire Morrison Foundation would become one of the country's largest organizations supporting children in vulnerable situations. And in its main lobby, there was a special photo. 4 people smiling on the courthouse steps, their expressions telling how a little street warrior had found a family, and how she'd taught an entire empire the true meaning of love. Because sometimes, the strongest families are the ones fate brings together in the most unexpected ways. And sometimes, it's the children who teach us the most important lessons about love, courage, and the true meaning of wealth. The first major change at the Morrison mansion took place a week after the court ruling. On a sunny Thursday morning, Jack watched quietly as workers moved his mahogany desk from the top-floor office to a spacious room on the ground level, featuring large French windows overlooking the garden where the girls often played. "Are you sure about this, sir?" Robert, in his assistant of more than a decade, asked as he sorted through piles of paperwork. "The board wasn't too pleased about your reduced hours announcement. The Asia project can wait," Jack interrupted, his eyes fixed on the scene outside the window. Lily was teaching the twins a new game involving pebbles and chalk circles on the ground. Their laughter drifted through the glass, a melody worth more than any contract. "You know, Robert," he went on, turning to face his assistant, "I spent years building an empire around numbers, ROI, profit margin, market value. But I've discovered that the most important numbers in my life are 3, my daughters." News that Jack Morrison, the relentless CEO of Morrison Group, was reducing his work schedule to spend more time with his family sent shockwaves through the financial market. Stocks fluctuated, investors questioned, competitors speculated. But for the first time in his corporate life, Jack was at peace knowing that some things outweighed profit margins. Mornings at the mansion gained a new routine. Instead of dawn teleconferences, there was breakfast together. Jack had learned to make passable pancakes under Lily's watchful tutoring, still not perfect, but filled with enough love to mask any flaws. "You're improving," Lily commented one morning, eyeing the slightly crooked pancake on her plate. "This one only has 3 burnt spots." Emily and Ava laughed, their mouths smeared with chocolate syrup. It was a scene Claire would have adored. The messy kitchen, flour dusting the counter. A real family sharing not just a meal, but moments. "Dad," Lily said, her voice turning serious while she fiddled with a piece of pancake, "did you know there are a lot of kids on the street who've never even tasted pancakes?" The innocent remark carried the kind of weight that often accompanied Lily's observations, simple but brimming with compassion and truth. It struck Jack in a way that reminded him of Claire. Later that same afternoon, he called a special meeting. Sarah Chen arrived to find not just Jack but also the 3 girls seated around a makeshift conference table in the library. "I want to create a foundation," he announced without preamble, "to help children living on the streets. And I want all 4 of you to help me plan it." Sarah smiled, as though she'd anticipated this. In her briefcase, she already had documents about similar programs, statistics on vulnerable children, and contacts of specialists in social assistance. "Can we call it the Claire Foundation?" Lily asked timidly. "Because she wanted to help kids like me, right?" Jack felt his heart tighten. It was exactly the name Claire would have chosen. In her diary, found months earlier, she'd written about her dream of expanding their family to help less fortunate children. The project began to take shape that very afternoon in the library. Sarah contributed her social work expertise, identifying the most urgent needs. The girls offered surprisingly practical ideas, especially Lily, who knew firsthand what children in street situations lacked the most. "We need to have hot showers," she explained, counting on her fingers, "and lockers where they can keep their stuff safe." On the street, you learn you can't really sleep if you're worried about your belongings. Emily suggested a library like the one in the mansion, recalling how Lily had been captivated by all the books. Ava insisted on a kitchen where kids could learn to make their own meals. But the most important thing, Lily added, her voice carrying wisdom beyond her years, is having people who look them in the eye, who don't pretend they're invisible. Over the following months, the Clare Foundation materialized. Jack approached it with the same dedication he once reserved for his biggest business deals, but now with a different kind of return in mind, changing lives rather than raking in profits. The first shelter opened in a renovated mansion not far from where Lily used to sleep. It was designed to be far more than just a roof over someone's head. It was a temporary home intended to make children feel safe and loved. The library, Emily's idea, took up the entire first floor with cozy reading nooks and comfy chairs. Ava's industrial kitchen was equipped to serve meals and teach cooking classes. There were study rooms, medical and psychological offices, and well-thought-out recreational areas. But the true heart of the project was the staff. Jack and Sarah spent weeks selecting and training professionals who understood that their job was more than caretaking. It was about loving. "You have to look them in the eye," Lily said during one of the training sessions, her small voice steady before a room of adults. "Because sometimes all a street kid needs is someone who really sees them." On opening day, Jack watched his 3 daughters interact with the first group of children. Lily, in particular, had a natural gift for putting them at ease. She understood their fears, their hesitations. She had lived them. "See," she told Jack, holding his hand while they watched a group of children discover the library. "Sometimes you have to lose everything to gain a whole family. Now we're helping other kids find their families too." The Morrison mansion also underwent a transformation. What once was a symbol of material wealth became a real home, where laughter resounded in every hallway and love overflowed in every corner. Jack's ground-level office became a communal hub, where the girls did homework, drew pictures, read, or simply spent time near him. In a special corner of the library, Jack created a memory wall. At its center was the photo taken at the courthouse, the moment they officially became a family. Next to it was the small remnant of Lily's old dress, framed like a precious artifact. More recently, he added a photo from the Clare Foundation's grand opening, showing 3 smiling girls cutting a ribbon beside their proud father. As the months passed, the Clare Foundation expanded. New centers opened. New programs were launched. Jack discovered that his corporate expertise could serve a higher purpose. Every shelter was run efficiently, each resource maximized to help more children. But the real success was measured not in spreadsheets, but in the smiles of children who, like Lily, found more than just shelter. They found love. It was in the stories of transformation, the reconstituted families, the dreams that finally had room to grow. One night, while watching his daughters sleep, Lily nestled between the twins, as always. Jack came across a new entry in Claire's journal, one he hadn't noticed before. "True legacy isn't what we leave in vaults or bank accounts, but the love we plant in people's hearts. I hope someday Jack understands this." Smiling through tears, he realized he finally did. His financial empire remained, but now it served a greater mission, to generate not just profit but also hope. The Clare Foundation would grow into one of the nation's largest charitable organizations for vulnerable children. But its greatest achievement wasn't the impressive statistics or awards. It was the countless small moments of love, hope, and transformation. And it all started with a little girl from the streets who taught an entire empire that true wealth isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in hugs, in lopsided pancakes made with love, and in the courage to open your heart to new beginnings. Because sometimes, it's the children who teach us the most important lessons about love, family, and what success really means. The garden of the Morrison mansion had been transformed. Hundreds of colorful lanterns hung between the trees, their gentle glow dancing like fireflies in the evening breeze. Balloons in soft pink and gold formed elegant arches, and tables adorned with wildflowers, Lily's specific choice, dotted the perfectly manicured lawn. Sandra had truly outdone herself with the preparations. The housekeeper had spent weeks planning every detail of Lily's birthday party, determined to make it as special as the little girl being celebrated. It was more than a 7th birthday. It marked a year since a brave child had jumped into a pool and forever changed the Morrison family's life. In her bedroom, Lily slowly spun in front of the mirror, admiring the new dress Emily and Ava had helped her choose. It was light blue like a perfect summer sky, with tiny embroidered butterflies along the hem, so different from the torn dress she'd worn a year ago. "Nervous?" Emily asked, adjusting a ribbon in her sister's hair. "A little," Lily admitted, her fingers playing with the delicate chain around her neck, a gift from Jack, given a day early, featuring a small bird pendant. "I've never had a birthday party before." "But it's going to be the best party ever," Ava proclaimed, bouncing on the bed with excitement. "Dad said he has a special surprise." In the office, Jack was on his 3rd attempt to straighten his tie, eyes fixed on the documents on his desk, the finalized adoption paperwork, approved after months of legal process. He planned to share the announcement during the party, making it twice as meaningful. "Claire would be so proud," Sarah commented softly from the doorway. The social worker, now a close friend of the family, had arrived early to help with last-minute details. "She always knew," Jack replied, gently touching Claire's journal on his desk, "that our family had room for more love." Guests started arriving at twilight, kids from Lily's school, families helped by the Claire Foundation, close colleagues turned real friends over the past year. The garden soon buzzed with laughter and animated conversations. Lily descended the stairs between Emily and Ava when the first notes of "Happy Birthday" began. She paused for a moment, her small hands squeezed in her sister's, overwhelmed by the crowd gathered to celebrate her. "It's going to be okay," Emily whispered. "You're not alone anymore." Jack watched his daughters from the foot of the stairs, his heart full of pride and love. It was hard to believe it had only been a year since Lily had entered their lives. It felt as though she'd always been there, completing their family in ways he never knew he needed. The party was a dream. Lily, once so withdrawn around strangers, now moved among the guests with graceful confidence. She stopped frequently to chat with children from the Claire Foundation, her face lighting up when she heard how their lives had changed. "You'll see," she told a group of recently arrived girls from the new shelter. "Sometimes life changes in ways you never imagined." After the cake, topped with tiny sugar birds symbolizing freedom and new beginnings, Jack asked for everyone's attention. This was the moment he had waited for. "A year ago," he began, his voice thick with emotion, "a small warrior jumped into our pool and saved my daughters. What she didn't realize is that, on that day, she also saved me." The garden went silent, everyone listening. Lily, seated between the twins, looked at Jack with tears shimmering in her eyes. "Before Lily, I was a man who measured success in numbers and deals. I believed I was building an empire for my daughters, but I was missing out on the most valuable moments of their lives." He paused, taking a gold envelope from his pocket. "Lily taught us that family isn't about blood or official documents. It's about love, bravery, and the willingness to open your heart even when you're scared. But today," he smiled, opening the envelope, "today I want to make official what our hearts have known for a long time." The adoption papers caught the light of the lanterns. Lily clapped her hands over her mouth, her eyes wide with surprise and joy. "Lily Morrison," Jack said the name proudly. "Would you do me the honor of officially letting me be your dad?" What happened next would remain forever in everyone's memory. Lily bolted into Jack's arms, tears streaming. Emily and Ava joined the hug. And for one perfect moment, the world contained just those 4 people, bound by a love deeper than blood. "Thank you," Lily whispered into Jack's chest, "for giving me not just a place to stay, but a place to belong." Later, when the party began to wind down, Jack found Lily sitting by the pool, her bare feet dipping into the water. It was the first time she'd come so close to the pool since that rescue day. "I'm not afraid of it anymore," she said when Jack sat beside her. "Now it reminds me that sometimes the scariest things can bring the greatest joys." Jack smiled, thinking about how much his own life had changed in the past year. The Claire Foundation thrived, transforming lives throughout the city. His corporate empire was still strong, but now guided by a new purpose, balancing profit with social responsibility. Most importantly, he finally understood what Claire had always known, that real wealth couldn't be measured in dollars or market shares, but in the smiles of his daughters, in small daily victories, in the love that grew a bit more each day. "You know what I like best about this pool now?" Lily asked, interrupting his thoughts. "What, sweetheart?" "It reminds me that sometimes we have to dive into the unknown to find our way home." Across the lawn, Emily and Ava waved, calling them over for one more dance. Soft music drifted through the garden as the last rays of daylight painted the sky in pink and gold. Jack stood up, extending his hand to his youngest daughter. As they walked toward the makeshift dance floor, he glanced at the starry sky, feeling Claire's presence more strongly than ever. "You were right, my love," he whispered to the stars. "We truly had more than enough love to share." The celebration continued late into the night, the colorful lanterns flickering in the breeze like earthly stars. Off to one side, near the cake table, Sarah quietly organized donations guests had brought for the Claire Foundation. Books, toys, clothes, small tokens of kindness that would multiply into countless smiles. By the time the final guests departed, Jack found his 3 daughters asleep together in the greenhouse hammock. Lily in the middle, as always, protected by Emily and Ava, her new blue dress blending with theirs like waves in the same sea. Watching them sleep so peacefully, Jack Morrison, the man who once measured success in billions, realized what true wealth was. It wasn't in his bank accounts or stock portfolios. It was there before his eyes, in the love these 3 little girls had taught him to both give and receive. Because sometimes children teach us the most important lessons, and sometimes it takes a small warrior from the streets to show an entire empire that the most priceless treasures can't be locked in vaults. They must be planted in hearts and nurtured with love every day. The story of the Morrison family would continue, no longer as a tale of rescue, but as a testament to the transformative power of true love. And somewhere, Claire was smiling, knowing her final wish, for her family to be whole and happy, had come true in the most extraordinary way possible. Because in the end, families aren't defined by grand gestures, but by the small moments of shared love, the imperfect breakfasts, the bedtime stories, the hugs that heal old wounds and build bridges to the future. And as Jack carried his sleeping daughters indoors, one by one, he knew he had found his true calling, not as a builder of empires, but as a father who had finally learned that life's greatest success is simply being there, loving unconditionally, and letting your heart grow a little more each day. The Morrison mansion fell asleep beneath a star-studded sky, its windows still glowing faintly from the forgotten lanterns in the garden. Within its walls, 4 hearts beat in unison, joined not by fate or coincidence, but by the conscious choice to love, to try, to stay. Because sometimes the strongest families are the ones fate weaves from the most unlikely threads. And sometimes, you have to lose everything to discover what truly matters.